Only the ruthless build wealth, the dark truth. Why does kindness keep you poor? Why do the most polite men fade into the background, while the cold ones rise to power? Why does the world reward those who take, not those who wait? From a young age, you're told to be nice, to share, to wait your turn. But step into the real world, and you'll find a jungle hiding behind the rules. Not a playground, a battlefield. Thomas Hobbes saw it centuries ago. He wrote of men as wolves, driven by hunger, fear, and domination. In his world, there is no fairness. Only a cold negotiation between forces that want to survive, and forces that want to rule. This video won't give you motivational fluff. It will confront you with a truth that's hard to digest. Wealth was never about goodness. It was always about force, control, and the art of walking over others, without guilt. If you still have the courage, keep watching. But remember, what you'll learn cannot be unlearned. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and enter the dark side of wealth. Topic 1. The myth of the good man. You were raised on a dangerous fantasy. A myth that says if you're good, the world will reward you. If you work hard, play fair, and follow the rules, you'll eventually be recognized. But look around. The streets aren't paved with gold for the righteous. They're stained with the footprints of the bold, the cunning, and the merciless. Every time you chose to stay silent to avoid conflict, someone else used that silence as an opportunity to rise. The myth of the good man is not just naive, it's designed. Society needs obedient workers. It needs men who won't question, won't rebel, won't dominate. So it feeds you this illusion that humility is strength, that patience is virtue, and that wealth will come if you just wait your turn. But in truth, your turn never comes, because the ruthless don't wait. They take. Thomas Hobbes wrote that in the state of nature, life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. That's not just a description of prehistoric tribes. It's the silent code behind every corporate office, every boardroom, every political empire. The man who dares to speak with raw self-interest, he's seen as dangerous. But he's also the one who ends up with the power. Not because he's cruel, but because he's awake. Kindness becomes a trap when it turns into submission. How many times have you apologized for things that weren't your fault? How often do you downplay your value so others won't feel threatened? This false humility doesn't earn respect, it invites predators. In a world where wealth flows toward dominance, every act of unnecessary politeness can cost you more than you know. You're told to build networks, to be likable, to win people over. But the men who truly rise don't waste time being liked. They build leverage. They understand that power doesn't come from approval, it comes from necessity. Make people need you. Make them fear losing you. Only then do you become irreplaceable. The kind man waits to be chosen. The ruthless man builds his own altar and crowns himself. He doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't need validation. He simply moves, because motion itself intimidates the stagnant. He creates tension, because tension creates change. While others freeze in the discomfort, he thrives in it. You might think, but won't this make me a monster? That's the voice of the myth speaking. The myth wants you to fear your own potential. It wants you to equate strength with evil. But ruthlessness isn't about cruelty, it's about clarity. The clarity to see that waiting is a slow form of death, and that sometimes, the most moral thing you can do is to stop pretending. The truth is, you're already being used. Every system, educational, financial, even religious, benefits from you believing in this myth. It keeps you calm while you're being drained. It keeps you hopeful while you're being harvested. The moment you wake up, the system loses a pawn, and that terrifies it. So what happens when you start acting with ruthless clarity? People will resist. They'll call you arrogant, aggressive, selfish. Let them. Every powerful man has been called those things. It's a sign you're moving. It's a sign you're breaking the illusion. The fear they project is the fear they feel, because you're no longer safe to them. And what about love, friendship, family? Does ruthlessness mean isolation? No. It means filtering. It means choosing who deserves your softness, not offering it by default. It means protecting your energy like a king protects his kingdom. Not everyone gets access. Not everyone should. To build wealth, you must first build boundaries. Emotional, energetic, and strategic. You must be willing to say no, without explanation. You must be able to walk away, without guilt. That's not cruelty. That's sovereignty. And sovereignty is what the myth fears most. You've been lied to about what makes a good man. A truly good man is not the one who smiles while being walked on. He is the one who knows when to raise his sword, and when to sheath it. Ask yourself now, who taught you that strength was shameful? And who benefited from you believing it? What do you think? Have you lived under the myth of the good man? Let me know in the comments. Your experience matters. Topic 2. Wealth is a weapon, not a reward. Wealth was never meant to be a reward for virtue. That idea, that money comes to those who deserve it, is one of the most destructive lies ever sold. It turns the pursuit of wealth into a morality test, when in truth, wealth is neutral. It flows toward those who move decisively, those who break patterns, those who aren't paralyzed by conscience when survival is on the line. In war, the soldier who hesitates dies. In business, the entrepreneur who waits gets crushed. In life, the man who overthinks his right to thrive gets devoured by the ones who never questioned it. That's the brutal truth Hobbes exposed. In nature, morality doesn't protect you, force does. And in our world, wealth is simply another form of force. You can pretend that's unfair. You can romanticize fairness all you want. But fairness isn't a law, it's a luxury. And those who build wealth understand this. They don't seek equality, they seek control. Not because they're evil, but because they refuse to gamble their fate on someone else's kindness. They make their own map. They plant their own flag. Look at how the richest people move. They don't ask what's allowed, they ask what's possible. They don't seek safety, they calculate risk. They're not driven by comfort, they're driven by dominance. That's why their presence shifts rooms, bends rules, changes markets. Not because they're lucky, but because they're trained to win, no matter the terrain. If you want to play the wealth game like a saint, you'll lose to those playing like generals. You'll moralize every decision while they weaponize every opportunity. You'll worry about fairness while they're writing the rules. You'll seek peace while they're claiming territory. And one day, you'll look back and realize, your goodness was used as a leash. The man who builds wealth must see himself as a sovereign. He cannot be just another piece on the board. He must become the player. That requires a shift not in skill, but in soul. A rejection of the victim identity. A burning of the innocence you clung to in hopes that life would be nice. Life is not nice. It is hungry. And wealth is one of its sharpest teeth. Many fear this truth because they fear becoming cold. But coldness is not evil, it is clarity. The man who sees the battlefield for what it is can finally stop pretending. He can stop living for approval. He can stop bowing to a morality that was never meant to protect him. He can act, with precision, with fire, with silence if needed. That is the posture of wealth. And what of compassion? Does this path deny it? No. It purifies it. When you stop leaking energy to everyone, you gain the power to heal those who matter. You become generous by choice, not obligation. Powerful compassion is not universal. It is selective. It is earned. And that makes it sacred. So when you see men hoarding money, protecting power, building walls, understand, they're not being cruel. They're being awake. They've learned the hard truth. If you don't protect your kingdom, someone else will invade it. And they won't ask for permission. The longer you see wealth as a prize for being good, the longer you'll stay poor and confused. Real wealth builders don't ask, "What do I deserve?" They ask, "What can I build? What can I seize? What can I protect?" That is the dark clarity required to win in a system built on movement, not mercy. So ask yourself now, have you been playing the wealth game like a servant, or like a sovereign? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This conversation is one most men never dare to have. Topic 3. Society was built to keep you weak. If you feel guilty for wanting more, that's not an accident, it's conditioning. Society depends on that guilt to keep you small. From school to work to religion, you're told that ambition is dangerous, that power corrupts, and that humility is the path to salvation. But who benefits from your humility? Who profits from your weakness? Thomas Hobbes warned that in the absence of force, chaos reigns. So to avoid that chaos, societies create order, and that order requires compliant men. Men who won't challenge authority. Men who won't pursue power too loudly. Men who follow, not lead. That's you? That's who they trained you to be. Every system you were placed in, classrooms, offices, families, was a laboratory in obedience. You were rewarded for being quiet, for following rules, for waiting your turn. You were punished for asking too many questions, for standing out, for being too intense. And slowly, your fire was domesticated. Your edge was dulled. Your will was softened. But here's the twist. The same society that punishes ruthlessness secretly worships it. The men on top, CEOs, politicians, kings, they don't follow the rules they preach. They rise by bending them, breaking them, reinventing them. They talk about fairness while practicing domination. They sell humility while hoarding power. And you applaud them for it. You see, weakness is celebrated only when it's in you. But when someone else uses force to win, you call it leadership. When they take without apology, you call it vision. That's the double standard society thrives on. It makes you ashamed of the very traits that would set you free, while admiring those traits in its rulers. This isn't a conspiracy, it's structure. Power requires hierarchy. Hierarchy requires obedience. And obedience requires mental chains disguised as virtues. That's why ambition is shamed, pride is pathologized, and ruthlessness is demonized, unless you're already at the top. Then it's strategy. Then it's genius. If you want to escape this trap, you need to see the training. See how every moment of guilt was engineered. How every moment of self-doubt was encouraged. How every dream you postponed was part of someone else's plan. You weren't lazy. You weren't confused. You were programmed to be predictable, manageable, safe. Breaking free begins with rage, not regret. The rage of realizing you were lied to. The rage of knowing your instincts were never the enemy. That voice inside you, the one that said, "Take more, do more, be more," that was never darkness. That was your original fire. And they tried to drown it. But rage alone isn't enough. You must channel it into structure, into strategy, into moves that build power instead of just rejecting control. The man who wakes up must build, not just rebel. He must replace the old system with something unshakable. That's what true ruthlessness is, not destruction, but creation without apology. It starts with your inner world. Stop negotiating your worth. Stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never designed to hold you. Speak like you're building an empire. Move like every minute is war. Choose your circle like your life depends on it, because it does. Every conversation is a transaction of energy. Spend wisely. You were not born to obey. You were trained to. And that training runs deep. But it's not irreversible. The man who sees the bars is already freer than most. Now break them. And when you do, don't look back. Build forward. Build wide. Build like your life is yours again. Let's talk in the comments. When did you first realize society was shaping you to be small? Topic 4. The lie of balance and moderation. They told you to seek balance. To avoid extremes. To be measured, reasonable, centered. But here's the dark truth. Balance is a cage when it's imposed. Moderation is the language of the mediocre when spoken to the hungry. And every man who ever built something great had to be temporarily unbalanced, obsessed, aggressive, relentless. Balance sounds noble. But ask yourself, who benefits from your balance? Who gains when your fire is cooled, your ambition diluted, your hunger kept polite? Moderation is not freedom, it's containment. And society loves nothing more than a man who almost rises, but stops himself right before it gets uncomfortable. Thomas Hobbes understood this discomfort. He didn't dream of a world where men lived in perfect harmony. He described a world where power must be checked with power, not softened by dreams. His vision was one of fierce negotiation, not spiritual surrender. In such a world, balance doesn't protect you, it sedates you. You've felt it before. The moment you wanted more money, more presence, more voice, and someone whispered, "Be careful. Don't go too far." That whisper wasn't wisdom. It was fear. And often it didn't come from your enemies. It came from the ones closest to you, trained to keep you calm. But greatness isn't calm. It isn't symmetrical. It isn't safe. Greatness is wild, irregular, dangerous. It takes a man out of rhythm and burns his plans. You don't find greatness on a neatly paved road. You find it in the chaos of obsession, the sleepless grind, the unapologetic hunger to dominate your own destiny. Every empire was built on imbalance, on sacrifice, on excess energy poured into one mission while everything else burned. That's not weakness, that's ignition. And the modern man who dares to go all in is seen as unstable, even insane. But deep down, every man respects the one who risks madness to achieve mastery. You've been told to pace yourself, to think long term, to preserve energy. And yes, there's wisdom in preparation. But too often that wisdom is just procrastination dressed up in smart words. Sometimes the only path forward is intensity. Not a drip, a flood. Not a step, a leap. Not caution, conquest. The lie of balance also hides in relationships. You're told to compromise, to lower your voice, to soften your edge. But if your truth can't be spoken loudly, then it's not freedom, it's submission. And every time you compromise who you are to maintain peace, you're losing a piece of your own throne. This doesn't mean chaos is the goal. It means chaos must be endured, consciously, when something sacred is being born. Fire is destructive, yes. But it's also how steel is forged. If your path doesn't include moments of burning imbalance, you're not creating, you're just decorating your cage. The man who dares to break free from moderation will face judgment. He'll be called extreme, reckless, obsessed. But he'll also feel something few others do, movement. Real, irreversible movement. The kind that scares people, and wakes him up. Ask yourself this: what did you abandon in the name of balance? What did you water down to fit the narrative of being reasonable? Comment below. The truth might sting, but it will set you back on fire. Topic 5. Why ruthlessness is a form of love. It sounds contradictory. But the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. True ruthlessness is not the opposite of love. It is a rare, purifying form of it. Ruthlessness is love, sharpened. Love that protects. Love that refuses to be exploited. Love that says, "I care too much to let you destroy me." Most men confuse love with surrender. They believe that to love is to give endlessly, to forgive without limit, to sacrifice self for the comfort of others. That's not love. That's emotional slavery. Love without boundaries is not divine, it's deadly. And it creates broken men who bleed for people who would never bleed for them. Ruthlessness enters when you finally realize you cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot protect your tribe if you're depleted. You cannot guide anyone if you've lost your center. So you stop apologizing for your fire. You stop hiding your standards. You love, yes, but you do it from a place of strength, not martyrdom. Thomas Hobbes understood this instinct. His vision of human nature was not nihilistic, it was protective. He saw men as naturally self-interested, yes. But in that self-interest lies the root of real cooperation. Not fake peace. Not blind obedience. But a conscious alliance, born from strength, not weakness. Ruthlessness also protects you from illusion. When you love blindly, you fall into fantasy. You project ideals onto others, and suffer when they betray them. Ruthlessness keeps your eyes open. It says, "I see you clearly. I love you fully. But if you turn on me, I'm ready." That's not cold. That's sacred preparedness. The ruthless man doesn't chase approval. He doesn't beg to be understood. He speaks with clarity and walks away when needed. Not because he lacks love, but because he has too much of it to waste it. Every no he speaks is a yes to his deeper purpose. Every door he closes is a wall protecting his inner kingdom. You've seen it. Men who love too much and lose everything. Their energy, their mission, their sanity. They confuse sacrifice with virtue. But unchecked sacrifice is slow suicide. And it teaches others that your boundaries don't matter. Ruthlessness teaches the opposite. I choose who receives me. And that choice is sacred. It's in business too. Loving your craft means being ruthless with mediocrity. Loving your future means being ruthless with distraction. Loving your freedom means being ruthless with systems that drain you. If you are not defending your love with sharp edges, then it's not love, it's indulgence. We're told that ruthless people are heartless. But that's a lie sold by the weak to shame the powerful. True ruthlessness is full of heart, but not stupidity. It is generous, but not naive. It is open, but not exposed. It is kind, but never unguarded. There's a reason lions don't apologize for roaring. They are not being aggressive, they are simply announcing their presence. And when you reclaim your ruthlessness, you are doing the same. You're not attacking. You're protecting. Not dominating, but declaring, I will not be swallowed. You are not here to become a beast. You are here to become whole. And sometimes, that wholeness requires a blade, not because you want to hurt, but because you finally refuse to be hurt. Ruthlessness is not cruelty. It is clarity. And clarity is the highest form of love. Comment below. When did you first realize that your love needed sharper edges? Topic 6. The pain of waking up. Waking up sounds beautiful, until it happens. Then it hurts like hell. Because awakening isn't a light descending from heaven. It's a fire ripping through everything false. And when you begin to see the world for what it is, the games, the manipulations, the quiet betrayals, the first feeling isn't joy. It's rage. Then grief. Then silence. You begin to notice things you were blind to. How often you agreed just to belong. How many times you said yes when your soul screamed no. How much of your energy was spent maintaining peace in rooms that were silently draining your power. You realize, your suffering wasn't random. It was designed. Thomas Hobbes wrote about fear, not as weakness, but as the foundation of order. The state uses fear to maintain control. And your personal awakening? It begins when that fear no longer works. When you stop fearing rejection more than regret. When you stop fearing conflict more than self-betrayal. That's when the spell breaks. But the spell breaking doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels like death. The death of your old self. The people who like that version of you start to pull away. The systems that once rewarded your compliance stop making sense. You start asking dangerous questions, not to others, but to yourself. Who am I without approval? Who am I without the story they gave me? These questions are knives. They cut through layers of false identity. They leave you exposed. And in that exposure, you see a terrifying truth. You've been playing small, not because you lacked power, but because you were taught to fear it. The pain of waking up is that you can't go back. You can't unsee. You can't pretend. You're no longer entertained by illusions. You no longer crave shallow praise. You no longer fit in. And that's the price, disconnection. But it's also the beginning of real freedom. Because the man who doesn't need the world to agree with him is finally free to move through it. You begin to embrace solitude, not as loneliness, but as sanctuary. You become dangerous, not because you attack, but because you no longer submit. You become silent, not because you're defeated, but because you're listening to something deeper. The voice of the real self, rising from beneath the rubble. That self doesn't want comfort. It wants purpose. It doesn't want to be liked, it wants to be true. And to honor that truth, you must burn bridges, disappoint expectations, and walk through valleys where no one applauds. But that's the initiation. Every sovereign man must pass through exile before he enters dominion. You may lose friends. You may lose status. You may lose the illusion that you were ever safe. But in the ashes, you'll find something priceless: your own spine, your own fire, your own path. That's the secret. The pain is not punishment. It's proof. Proof that you're shedding a life that was never yours to begin with. Waking up is not the end, it's the beginning of war. A war between who you were trained to be and who you truly are. And you must choose, stay numb and accepted, or be awake and alone, at least for a while. But in that solitude, your soul will grow teeth, and your eyes will adjust to a new light. You don't need comfort right now. You need confrontation. With the lies. With the masks. With the parts of you that settled. Let the pain guide you, not to bitterness, but to clarity. Not to cruelty, but to command. This pain is sacred. It's yours. And it's trying to give you back to yourself. Let me ask you directly, what illusion did you have to destroy to finally wake up? Tell me in the comments. Your fire might ignite someone else's. Rise without permission, led without apology. The world was never soft. You were simply lied to. Told that goodness alone would be enough. That patience would be rewarded. That humility would open doors. But as you've now seen, none of that was ever real. Wealth doesn't come to the kind. It comes to the clear. To the man who dares to move without waiting for applause. To the one who sees the game for what it is, and plays it with ruthless precision. This is not the path of cruelty. It is the path of sovereignty. You don't need to become a monster, but you must become unshakable. You must kill the myth of the good man who waits to be chosen, and become the one who builds, who speaks, who acts, because time won't wait, and neither should you. If there is love in you, protect it. If there is fire in you, unleash it. You owe the world your full strength, not your quiet suffering. Now it's your turn. Like this video if it woke something in you. Subscribe if you're done being small. And share this with the man you used to be, the one still asking for permission. Your kingdom is not granted. It is claimed.